So one of the things that comes to mind when we think of comic book covers is iconic single images. And I've gone to so many of these panels, I'm sure that you have too, and heard what are your influences? What are your inspirations? Where does inspiration come from? That kind of question. I'm much more interested in, when thinking of crafting a cover image, a splash page, something like that, can you recall the first time you really got grabbed and arrested by, I don't know, a Frank Frazetta painting, a cover on a comic book, a movie poster? Is there something that really grabbed your attention, just, completely blew you away, that kind of thing?
Are we just going down the
Yeah, I mean, however you want. Jump in.
Drew Struzan's like Indiana Jones posters and Star Wars posters were something that like really grabbed me. Because even as a young kid drawing and stuff, like you don't really know words like composition and negative space and things like that. And to see something like that really kind of blew me away. I'm like, whoa, like as a little kid, you don't even think, there's a guy who does movie posters for a living and that's all he does. And you're like, oh, like as a little kid, you can't really wrap your mind around that. And to see something that well done is pretty good. So.
Things like that jumped out to you guys?
You mean like covers or like posters?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Covers, posters, paintings, something that gave you the kind of iconic splash image that we think of when we think of comic covers.
Yeah, I think it's like two things. I totally agree with the Struz and stuff because I mean, like those are we take it for granted now. It's it's like, but back then we actually had illustrators paint covers and paint posters for movies, and they were works of art. Now they're more photoshopped, or it's just
badly photoshopped.
Yeah, or it's from a template. It's like a close up of a head and a logo or something, right? So. But beyond
we need
that,
his face real big on that poster.
Yeah, and it's got to be somewhat graphic so we can work in the logo, and they all have to be in the same pose or something.
Yes, it's a very incestuous business.
Yeah, but other than that, it was when I came to North America, I was like 6 years old, and I was really grabbed by reprints of old Marvel covers, like by like Kirby or Ditko, and I didn't know why it was. I thought it was the stories or the characters, but as an adult I realized the amount of like dynamism in those covers and the graphic nature of like the big bold shapes and things like that. And then as an adult, comic covers that really appealed to me, I discovered like the EC comics of like the 50s, and it was the war comics. Yeah, pre-code, and it was the colors. Right, like they would do like a war comic where the cover was entirely red with like the muzzle flare in yellow, and I was just like, why does this look so good? And you analyze it, it's because it's stripped down and it's just, it's all the impact is in the colors.
And it comes down to those bold things, so it jumps off at you on the shelves. It's about moving product in the publishing business.
Yeah.
Like these guys, and I think it's pretty funny, or pretty interesting that movie posters are a common thread here. Because they're definitely a major influence for me. I think it started for me with more media type stuff like Star Trek and things like that I could like just absorb myself into. But then visually, that's where it was born. But then visually, where it took off from there and kind of grew was with movie posters. When you'd see this iconic 007 movie poster when you're a kid. And and let's not forget Richard Amsel in the Indiana Jones setup. He kind of set the tone for that whole thing. Bob Peake, another guy who's an amazing craftsman, just passed away recently. But some of the greatest posters, it's like when you walk into a store and you see this book on the 100 greatest rock album covers, or something like that. It's the same thing for Bob Peake. It's like you could go through and find all these movie posters he's done that you've seen, and you've been like, oh my God, I love that. That's such a great. I didn't know who did that, but it's that one guy. Well, and then that times however many years you're in the industry, and it's like you were just saying a second ago. I thought that was very, very interesting. There's this guy somewhere that does this. And Jimmy Palmiotti used to work for an agency where he worked on some of the Dirty Harry posters, a lot of the posters that are classics. And for them, it wasn't so much a one-man operation. These guys are like, they're taking media and things from the assets from the film, and they're trying to create some kind of visual representation for it. And there's a certain set of rules that go with that, and then you can break any one of those you want, but there's a certain set of rules. And then beyond that, it was like, for me, it was like going to the mall when I was a kid was like an exercise in complete and utter boredom. Walking around following my mom trying on clothes and stuff like that. So I got to the point where I'm like, hey, I'll be in the bookstore. And there was a Frank Frazetta, Art of Frank Frazetta Volume 1 book in there that they probably should have made me buy it because I think I dog-eared that thing so bad.
About Lost, when I saw that Death Dealer thing, I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
I just thought, wow, that is so cool.
Yeah.
It's like,
And it was weird, I had a guy who I used to, play organized football when we were kids. One of the coaches had one of those customized vans with the silver warrior painted on the side of it, I'm like,
I miss those.
whoa.
Yeah, that's right.
Dude, the late 70s were so awesome.
Van art, if you guys, that might be lost
Van
on
art,
people now, but
custom
that was,
van art.
That was so retro, so awesome.
But yeah, I think movie posters are a big one, and things like Escape from New York, things like, for me, it's the iconic kind of, if you want to call them revenge sagas or anything, but it's kind of like that man versus everybody kind of revenge kind of a thing, whether or mission kind of a thing in the case of Snake Plissken. But like, when I saw the first Road Warrior movie, I lost my mind. I mean, that Star Wars fueled me as a 10-year-old, but nothing fueled me like the Road Warrior. It was just so far beyond. It was such an original.
Blade Runner when you're after seeing Star Wars when you're a kid, because you see Star Wars and you're like, oh, this is so great, and then Blade Runner, you're like, this is what adult filmmaking is, and then you're 12 years old and you think that sets your tone to like 20 or something.
I had such a hard time following it. I didn't really understand what was going on. I love the action. I love the use of color and mood and lighting and all that stuff that was going on. I think you have to be, cognizant of a lot of that stuff too, because at a base level what works for you. Like when I watched that stuff as a kid, some of it just was like, I didn't understand it, and then watching it as an adult, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But
So I was going to say, the nice thing about posters is that it compartmentalizes things very easily. What a poster is trying to do to you is trying to sell you on the concept of the film. So it uses things like the environment of the film, the characters from the film, the setting of the film, maybe the time period of the film, and it takes all those elements and puts them in whether it's a pastiche or just a single frame. A trailer is telling you a quick story, but a movie poster is telling you that story in one image.
Right.
And so it's very important that that you pull those things out of there. You find out what are the most important elements of this movie. What is the filmmaker trying to get across, and then approach it that way. That's what I try to do anyway. And I think that anyone who does that kind of stuff likes to absorb.
I think you totally nail on the head. I think the key to any good artist is, especially when you're doing covers, is you are telling a story. You're doing it with one image, and what are you trying to say about that world, about the character? How does the composition grab you? It's all these things that kind of make you pique your interest about, like, oh, I know everything there is to know about this, and this is something I'm into, and I can pick up and enjoy. I think a lot of movie posters, like the center on movie posters is just like, they were so well done before, but nowadays it seems like it's a lost art, and like it's just anybody with somewhat, any Photoshop skill can do it, and there's really a sense of design and everything that goes into all this stuff. And I remember hiring Drew Struzan for a job, and back when we were doing He-Man comics, and he did the He-Man cover for us, it was really cool.
I remember that.
Yeah, and it looked like Dolph Lundgren, and we're like, can we get Steve for this? We're like, who cares, Drew Struzan. But talking to Drew, I'm like, hey man, we're so glad you did the cover, and he just said, well, I don't really do this anymore because no one really hires me anymore. And like
Your jaw dropped fully off of your face.
24-year-old me was like, like, wow, man, what's wrong with people?
People are just
Where'd the
people.
world out, man? If that's like that, it's crazy.
Yeah, he was telling me he just lost the second, he did the movie poster for, this is the same time when he did the first movie poster for Harry Potter. And then he was telling me, maybe I shouldn't be telling you this, but that he had lost the job to the second Harry Potter poster because he had already done it, and they decided that they weren't going to go with it or use it anymore. They used all these photo bashed ones, and he was just like...
Yeah.
One of the reasons he retired.
Yeah.
He was just sick of that kind of stuff.
He said he got a little tired of it, but he was saying that one person you can always count on is, two people like Spielberg and Lucas that are always giving him money.
And Frank Darabont.
Yeah. It was just, it was really sad. It's like, man.
He's busier now that he's retired than he was when he was working. So.
Seeing him at these conventions is mind-blowing to me that I run into Drew all the time.
Oh, really? I didn't know he was coming.
Yeah,
he doesn't do a lot.
These conventions. Yeah, the guy who owned Dallas Comic Con before he sold it to Fan Expo.
Oh, wow.
Ben manages him now and brings him around to shows.
Ben does?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I'd love to sit on his panel. Tell the stories.
I'll have to let Dylan know that may not be. Oh, just kidding.
So one of the things you guys mentioned is the concept of art as a job. Is that something that you had readily when you started drawing seriously? And drawing seriously to me doesn't mean, oh, I've been at art school. It means if that is just all that you want to do and all that you know how to do as a kid. I could call that, drawing seriously. Something that is a serious part of your life. Was drawing as a job something that was just a basic level concept for you that early on, or did it come later for you?
For me, it was an obsession, drawing, because since 4 years old, I watched a movie called The Black Hole, and it just blew my mind. And I would just draw and pick up Black Hole comics for like the first year and send them to my dad, who was in Germany, and I don't know what happened to him long, probably like,
It was Slim Pickens' voice.
yeah, probably. It was, but for me, drawing was an obsession, and to be able to tell stories and make cool stuff, and like, I don't know, it's just the passion that you have for something that made such a huge impact on you, and to be able to replicate that and share it with other people was something that really kind of did it for me. Being able to do, like, I guess, and being able to do covers is one facet of that, because you're still telling a story with one image.
Yeah.
Very aptly, like what Tim said, like you're trying to sell people on an idea and on a concept, telling everything about this book or this character all in a single image that makes you either want to pick it up or put it down, which is that's a lot of power.
That's our job, is getting someone to pick it up.
Yes.
And if they pick it up, there's a 35% chance they'll purchase it. And if they don't pick it up, there's a 0% chance. So very important that you make something that makes people go, what is that? That was me in the comic shops, right?
And some people don't like the interiors, they just like the cover. I'm like, I'm just buying it for the cover.
Yeah.
And you're like, dude, that's
Great, put it in frame. Thanks for buying. Keep buying.
Well, I was in the shop and I had some money, and that cover was just too cool. I think
I had a similar experience. It's like, you're exactly right, drawing is an obsession. It's like when you're a kid and you're visually attuned, that's the way you express yourself. Like, you come out of a movie and you thought it was a cool movie, so you go home and draw pictures of that movie. Right?
Yeah.
I remember coming out of I don't know, any movie I saw, and if it sparked an interest in me, then I went home and just pulled out my pencil crayons and just drew pictures all day long, of the stuff I saw in the movie, what was in my head, and that was the way you express yourself. And then when I was
trying to paint yourself into the movie almost,
yeah,
right?
it's like now, I guess people would look up pictures from it in Google or something, but back then you didn't have that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you either had the little crappy magazine that came at the theater,
Just
that
Starlog,
yeah, or something,
Starlog.
or the rest was just you.
Cinefantastique.
And I had a buddy of mine, and we'd go every time we saw, I don't know, a new Star Trek movie. We'd come home and we would just draw pictures together, because he drew as well, and we just compare drawings of the scenes that we were drawing.
It's so funny because it's like we're almost like the same kind of person, like it's in terms of the way we think visually. But you're from there, and I'm from here, and it's like if we'd all been in the same shop when we were growing up, we'd have started a band or something.
Yeah.
It's like, because when you have that kind of connection, we couldn't. Were there maybe a slight handful of people that I could talk to on that level when I was growing up, and when you run into someone like that,
it's a
like someone else.
It's funny.
Pretty cool. You guys know.
I grew up in a steel town, and there was I always felt like the outsider because I was the only one who drew. And then I met one friend who liked to draw cars and monsters and guns, and I liked to draw people and backgrounds and environments. And so we were inseparable after that.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until I went to art college where I felt normal, because the entire school was filled with people like me, who had, and so I didn't feel like I was the complete outsider in this situation anymore. And then I remember reading a quote from Albert Camus, which just describes this completely. It's like he said, somebody asked him, "Are you an artist?" And he said, "I don't know if I'm an artist, but I know I'm nothing else." And that's exactly the way most artists feel. It's like, I don't know if I could ever make a living at this, consider myself a profession or something, but this is my obsession. This is all I do.
It's funny, when I was in high school. I mean, everybody thought I was going to play football. I get recruited by Illinois and a lot of crazy stuff, and I played a lot of sports. But when I chose art, it's like a lot of people were pissed because when you play at a high level in a sport or something like that, and then you just give it up, it sucks. But I got hurt, and I was like, I could play football. I could come back and play football and get hurt again, or I could just draw, and that seemed so much better. And it is an escape. I had a very idyllic childhood. I had no problems. But for some reason, I needed to live in some other fantasy world, some different place. It's almost like normal was too banal or something. I needed something to get me excited about.
I think it's your self-expression. Like, there's people who express themselves through words, there's people who express themselves through dance,
Yeah.
and visually, when people express themselves through their artwork, it's where they get a lot of their self-esteem from, and their sense of self-worth, and their place of where they belong in society is, I'm a person who draws, you know, and you like, if you ask a lot of artists, when did you decide to make art your career? It's like, I did that all my life.
Yeah,
I never had that problem of deciding at 16 what I wanted to do when I grew up.
Truthfully.
I do that always.
In spite of sports and all that, I knew that what I was going to do was draw.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Yeah, I think I had some challenges. It was I think like in the 90s, like doing art. Sometimes the art teacher when I was in high school, I did it all throughout junior high and was very encouraged. But then got to high school and I still drew, but I didn't do it as much because the art teacher there really frowned on like comic book work and stuff like that. He said that's not really
Shocking.
art. And I'm just like,
That's not a recurring theme.
yeah. So I was like, well, dude, can you like draw cars and all this other stuff and all this? He goes, well, I don't need to. I did fine art. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
Again, this is a class. This is something that runs through all our lives. I had the same situation, and the guy that taught art in our high school taught like, college accelerated courses. He was like a guy that people knew. He was also a real dick, he would disparage me in the class for drawing, the things that I drew, and then I would find out in other hours he'd be using my work to show people how to do stuff. And
Oh, wow.
and I'm like, that's really
That's
weird.
douche move.
And then I was up for some award, school award for this painting or something like that. And he goes, no, Tim's not the kind of guy who's in for me. He wouldn't want something like that. So he turned it down on my behalf and then told me about it later.
What?
So this is the kind of idiocy we're talking about.
Arch dick.
Yeah, really an art. Very good. I completely agree.
I would actually just draw pictures for my friends in art class, and then they would pay me money to do it, and then they just sign their name.
When I'd get shut down by a teacher, it just pissed me off, and I'd do it anyway to spite him.
That's the other thing that runs through most artists as well, that sense of rebellion.
Tell me I can't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
On that exact note, have you ever gotten an assignment for a cover, for example, and gotten notes of how to do something a certain way and go, no.
I immediately do it the other way.
Just
immediately go
If you want
completely the other
something
direction.
specific from me, my immediate impulse is to give you the exact opposite or something completely you don't want. Because it's like, if you think you have me figured out, and then I am scared that I'm just like a style or something at that point, and you already know what you want, you've already seen it, and I don't want to give you that.
Well, luckily
I'm
you're
gonna use that.
confident enough in your work too at this
Yeah.
stage where it came to a point to me that where I went I had to stop accepting work that I knew I wasn't going to enjoy doing.
Yeah, that's
because you
why
were retreading. They've already seen in their head. It's just a repeat of what you've already done.
Yeah, it's like, why do I want to, like, okay, well, you hired me to do this based on all this, but now you're telling me to do the exact opposite. It's like,
Why did you hire me?
On the other hand,
You're hiring to be me, why are you having me do somebody else's?
the very best art directors I've worked with have, and I respect them for this because they all said the same thing. There's like 3 or 4 that I always respected, and they all told me the same thing. And it was, don't give me what I want, just wow me. And I was like, thank you.
yes.
So now I'm completely free, and I will do my best work then because I am trying to push myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another great kind of like what I've luckily run into, you get the 700 approval machine, which is a complete hair-pulling experience because you're dealing with a lot of people who are giving you notes that know almost nothing about what they're talking about. And they certainly don't understand the heavy lifting involved. But generally they're paying you enough to turn your mind to that.
You
But
guys get paid good for that?
oh yeah. Well, if you're working in this for a studio, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
if someone's trying to do that in a comic for paying what comics, I laugh at them. I'm like, what are you doing?
He's laughing at us.
Well, I mean inside them.
I know. Yeah, it's,
But I can't do it. I just can't.
art by committee is really difficult, especially like, it sounds like it's like that in everything, because in comics too, like, Mark Chiarello at DC is great. So he'd push me to do things that I normally wouldn't do. He's saying, hey, look, I know you don't turn in any layouts that you don't want to draw, but you know what? I like this one because of this. And I know that you don't really want to do that's your least favorite, but I want you to make that the most strong thing. And I want you to try to do this and try to do that. And maybe look at this guy's work a little bit and try something like that, try something different. And I'm glad he would push me into doing these things, because I was a lot happier with it. But in other jobs, sometimes it goes before a whole editorial committee where it's kind of like too many cooks in the kitchen sometimes. So you get this hodgepodge amalgam of just like 30 characters, and there's no rhyme or reason for doing things, because like it's really hard because like some examples like working with Todd on Spawn was an incredible experience. And Todd's always like, just do a cool picture of Spawn. I was like, dude, like you had cool on this book. Like there's nothing I can say about Spawn that hasn't been done by him as far as cool poses or pictures or whatever. And working with Paul Jenkins, who is my writer on it, he's like, dude, you know, why don't we do like this and do some different type of Spawn covers? I was like, oh, dude, let's do it. So we did a bunch of these, and like Todd was just like not really having it. Because we did one of like the first issue was like a dog sitting on a Spawn costume that's empty, and the dog is supposed to be God in the book, and it's this dog sitting on a Spawn costume. And I thought it was so awesome. And Todd's like, yeah, we're not using that. And I was like, so we try to tie it to more of a narrative of what's going on in the book, which I thought would be stronger and something different. And we put Spawn in a hospital bed, and thank God we got that one snuck by because there was no time to do it different.
Yeah, it's not really an editorial kind of cover type job.
Yeah, but I understand where Todd's point of view is. It's like, hey, look, Spawn's all about energy and in your face, and I want those types of things. I was like, hey, well, that's cool. I think just for a couple of these though, can we try to do something that's a little anti-Spawn cover, but shows Spawn in a different light, because we're bringing this character back. We want to get people to be interested in, like, if all your covers always look the same or have the same flavor, it all looks the same. There's nothing that stands out. But if you try to do things that are a little bit out of the norm for what is normally seen for that character, that's also a good selling point for a cover. Like I'm doing Superman covers, and I didn't like, Superman's kind of boring. And like Mark's like, look, do Superman doing things that you haven't really seen him do on covers. So I was like, oh, cool. So I did one of him flying around at night. I've done one of him getting shot with bullets. You can see the bullets really hitting him and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, dude, this is actually a lot of fun, because I'm getting to do things with Superman that I think everyone knows Superman can do, but it hasn't really been on the cover too much. So
I thought you'd have
That's fine.
fingernails or something.
I wanted to have him eating a hot dog with his son sitting there, like, but no one, like, it's Mark's no longer handling. He's taking a break, so it's going back to
Well, see,
editorial.
the thing too is if you did that, that'd be the one cover that really stuck out too.
It would have been. Yeah, but you know what? It's okay. You just
Mark's a pussy. It's okay.
no, Mark's great.
I know. I'm just kidding.
It's just sometimes when you get these jobs, you have to make the best out of the situation you're in. And your job in doing covers or working covers is like, okay, well, what am I dealing with, and what's the feedback I'm getting, and what can I do to make lemonade? You know what I mean? Like you got a lot of lemons sometimes, and you're like, okay, well, this is what I'm up against. This is what they want. So how can I make that work?
I'm making a lemon meringue pie.
Yeah, you gotta
Forget
But
about
the cover
lemon.
that breaks the rules is the one that's memorable.
I
Like,
agree with
when
you,
you're,
dude.
when you're
Totally.
saying the stuff about
Yes.
like the Spawn covers,
Yes.
it's like it's true. It's like if he's saying it's all about the energy, and then it's like, well, we've had 20 years of that. The cover that doesn't have any energy in it or something, or has a completely different kind of energy,
Yes.
actually brings new energy to the book.
Yes.
Whenever I see those
And
collections,
You can
where
miss the
you
forest
see
for the trees when you live in that world so heavily as
yeah,
Todd does.
but when you see a wall,
Target audience.
like when you see a book where there's like 100 covers, like of the entire comics run, the one that your eye gravitates to is the one that is completely different. Like the logo is
The
being
outlier.
smashed or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And then you see those and you go like, oh, that looks so fresh.
Yeah.
You know?
You bring up something really good with talking about there being a concept of, well, it's all been done. Well, how many, there are people who will think
That's a shortcut to actually
Yeah.
thinking.
what kinds of breaking the mold sorts of things that you employed in covers that you guys have worked on, Tim, Michael, that have felt really, really good in terms of breaking outside of either what you were being told they were looking for, or what you were seeing just way too much of, where you really feel like you got to break outside of expectations?
freaking love doing that. That's like the greatest thing about comic covers in 2017. If you could not do this in the 90s, where you could replace the logo with something different, you could move the UPC box someplace else.
I got a lot of freedom with that on Hellblazer.
Yeah, and when you get to do that now, especially like I see comic covers, like I do comic covers where sometimes I go like, you know what, this is not a comic book cover. I'm going to treat this like it's a pharmaceutical package. Right, or like it's a movie poster,
editorial
or
approach.
it's it's something completely different. Because like if you get an assignment for Batman, I am not creative enough after 75 years of Batman to come up with cool pose Batman. I just don't have one. There's 75 years of it. There's another artist out there who goes, I still have a cool pose Batman, and that'll knock his socks. But I don't have one, so I sit there and what my immediate thinking is, how do I play with the entire concept of the cover and make it fresh now? So that it's not a cover, it's a movie poster, it's a gift wrap, it's something else, and that's what makes it new. And the fact that you can do that in this day and age for covers is so refreshing.
One of the things that actually jumps out at me in that exact vein is what Gabriel Walton did on those covers for Vision, where they're like Vision comics with Norman Rockwell painting style Vision poses in them, where I did not see that coming at all.
Well, what you have is an editor at Marvel, Axel Alonso, who is much of a prima donna as he can be sometimes. God love him. He's also very, very good at what he does, and he comes up with concepts that are breaking the framework of, like, come on, the hip hop covers, great idea, great concept. I told him it should have been metal covers, but maybe that comes later. Yeah. And that just one thing leads to another, and it all kind of spawned off of Mondo kind of going out of control and blowing up and kind of creating a market for that kind of a thing. It's the kind of thing that I always love to do anyway, and that finally the publishing world's kind of waking up to a little bit, taking a risk. But Axel's the guy that'll do that. I mean, Axel's the guy.
Tom Brevoort does that too.
Yeah.
He's great for that.
I think it's easier on smaller titles like Vision. People are like, you know what? People don't care about Vision.
Or Hawkeye, when they did
Hawkeye,
the 4-issue miniseries, great little graphic design covers.
You could do that, like working on like Superman. It's such a bigger thing, and then it's like, hey, we want this, and you're like, oh, man. Okay, this is the composition we should go with. Right now, we want this little one here. I'm like, it's not as powerful. Like, yeah, but I like that one. And you're like, well.
Yeah, the most fun covers are the ones where you go like, you know what, no one's looking at this, so therefore I get total freedom, right? But the ones with the highest.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to work on
wait.
Superman, because then you're going to have to stand up to the Kurt Swan measurement the whole time, and you're going to have to, kind of, they want that reserved kind of feel to it. Whereas if I take on a book that's already established, let's use the Punisher for an example, I want to do whatever the fuck I want to with him. I want to take him in a different, if I'm going to do it, let me do it the way I want to do it. And when I did Punisher, I said Jimmy approached me and he said, I want you to do the Punisher. I said, oh man, I'd kill to do the Punisher. I said, but can I take him out of the white? Can I put him in like paramilitary? He said, that's why we're hiring you. Yeah. And so I got to just completely go, okay, here's my Punisher. And luckily it caught on to the point where I got to kind of reinvent the character for a generation. So I don't feel intimidated by those things. I want to like it's just like the covers we were just talking about. It's like, how can I take this character and make this a challenge for myself and not redo what's been done before? I took on the Shadow for Dynamite, and I'm like, how do I make the Shadow look fresh for these kids that are going to pick up this book? I can't just do the same pulpy kind of stuff. It's got to be something else. So the first issue I did this photoreal looking thing, it didn't really work. No, the first issue I did something very graphic, but I didn't have my model that I wanted yet, so I didn't really like it. And then I went realistic, and I didn't like the way that looked. Usually I know what I'm going to do right off the bat, but here I just could not figure it out. And it took me 5 issues, but when I finally did that 5th issue, I went, I figured it out. And it was really just.
Don't you wish you could go back and redraw the first one?
You do, but I don't mind, leaving tracks of what it took me to get there. And
it's
once I figured that out, it was easy. And once I kind of figured out what that look was going to be, and it did exactly what I wanted it to do. It had a bunch of people picking it up that had never even read The Shadow before, which is that's the biggest compliment you can get.
I remember I had to do 6 issues of a cover, and it was for the Inhumans versus X-Men. And I drew a first cover, and then it was all done. And then I was working on the second one. That's when I found the hook. And I was like, oh, now I have to redraw the first ones. And it was in the canon. I was like, just give me like
just a week.
Let it go. Just give me a week, and I will take this and rework it, and then
as long as you're tell me the print deadline's not here.
Yeah, exactly. And I was in early, so that made it work. But
really,
yeah.
Wow, the best part ever happens.
Yeah. So because of that, so I
It's only the
got
first
extra
one I'm
time
working
to
on
do
that's
it,
early.
and
It's the
it
last
was so
one that's
good
late.
because of that.
That's cool. I
Is
think once you figure out your process and how to work with them, it's a little easier. I think I'm still trying to figure it out because like we're transitioning from Mark taking a break for handling a lot of the alternate covers with DC to.
Did he move out to West Coast?
Yeah, he's West Coast.
What's he doing with that?
Oh, he's just he's just taking he art directed in 2 years, like over like 1,000 some like covers.
That's because he's handling the whole line.
He's like, dude, I just need to take a break. So Ben Abernathy's amazing. I'm working with him.
Ben's a sweetheart.
So I'm trying to figure out like what editorial, because like Mark would just let me do what I wanted, and then he'd go, hey, what about this? And look at that, and try this. And I'm like, okay, cool. And now it's a different dynamic now, so I'm trying to figure it out. So I finished one cover with working with a new group, and I'm working on a second cover. And I feel like I'm finding my legs again still. So this second cover I'm working on, like.
Don't you hate it when you haven't figured it out, but that deadline is so, and you're like, God damn it, I just got to get something out, and then it's like you were just saying, you figured it out on your second one.
It's kind of like figuring out how to like feel out that group who's giving approvals and trying to like, okay, understanding what exactly they want. And that way you can deliver it, because sometimes when the dynamics change as far as who, quote unquote, your client is per se, and that changes a little bit, then there's always a learning curve on that too. And I think once you figure that out, it's a little bit easier, freer space to do what you want to do. You're like, okay, now I know kind of what this group wants and wants to see. It's like, okay, cool, I can deliver that, and I can make that happen. It's just like kind of like with you now, like the first cover I thought was good. The second cover I'm doing, it's got kids visiting the Justice League Watchtower, and I'm like, hey, little kids, the little kids are dressed like superheroes. I'm just like,
Plus, early in the mix like that too, it's like if you turn one out, you're excited, but for some reason you put all your energy into it, but for some reason it ain't tripping your trigger.
yeah.
So what you want is that next crack at it,
Yeah.
and
Well,
that's when
Okay,
you
but
ratchet back for the
Do you
grand slam.
sometimes finish something, and then if you have, God forbid, you should have an extra day before it's due? Do you ever like I often try to get something done a little early, so I have an extra day. So I sit there, go, you know what? I have this image. It was what I had in my head. I drew it. It looks fine. But now I really want to screw with it, and I want to take it, and I want to like say if I recrop this whole thing out, right?
I'm doing that the Red Sonja cover, redoing it, because I'm like, God.
I always feel like there's limitless possibilities at that stage when you have that extra day.
Yeah,
Like if you want to reapproach that or do something, take what you have and try to figure out a different angle on it.
Yeah, I always consider that, like, I call it post processing, you know, where I'm sitting there like, the whole thing's done. Let's see if I can just strip stuff out, you know, or if I can recrop it or move elements around, or, you know what, let's see if I can move the logo into a different place and see if they'll go for it.
Cover always dictates what it needs.
Yeah, and I always love that part of it, because it's, you know, like you record, it's like in a
You may
recording
not kill
studio, you record the tracks and you have the initial mix, and then you see if you could take out the bass, you know, or if you could just, you know, double up the
change it
drums
up.
or something, yeah.
I think that's the thing too. with
Old Sound
covers.
City here.
I try to understand, like for me, I never turn in a rough that I don't want to draw. For the most part, you know what I mean? Because like nothing's.
Never show them the one that you know they're going to pick.
Because here's the thing, like they will pick the one that you like the least, and that's just kind of how
Or
it
the
is.
mix too.
You know, the mix too. And sometimes that doesn't work because you're like, guys, these are two different concepts. It does not work. It's like cheese with an Oreo. It does not work.
I finally figured out how to deal with the whole sketch thing. I just give them one now.
That's what I always give them one. I give them one really polished.
Can we see a couple? No.
Yeah, I do like 6.
God, I just ran out of time.
You're killing yourself.
Just ran out of time. I only attempted one.
Yeah. I do 6 because they're like, oh, what's the try this? Why don't you do that?
Some
So,
people are. That's how they work.
it's a different group, because this new group, like with Chiarella, I do like maybe 2 or 3. He's like, dude, fine, how about this? Or he has an idea of like, hey, why don't you try something like this?
He's much more concise than most people
Yeah,
are.
I think, but working with this new group, just kind of figuring out, because like, Ben's got this monumental job Abernathy of like figuring out like, okay, I'm taking over this thing, so there's a learning group and all these like editorial now, like what to do, and so Ben is trying to earn his credit with that group.
I remember Ben was just a
Yeah.
little kid.
Oh, he's such a good dude, man. He's awesome.
Been around forever. He's been hopped to Dark Horse. He's worked for
Yeah.
everybody. I
He's
think.
worked for everybody. But like, I'm sure like Chiarella was like, hey, you know, this is the cover. Like, oh, okay, right? It's like, okay. But usually for me, I try to understand the design space. Because I think on the Superman Rebirth stuff, like there's this giant Rebirth logo, and then there's Superman underneath. So I'm always trying to get that template from them, so I understand this is my design space. This is how the figure is going to sit. This is how a figure is cropped within a cover. Because if you don't
Doing it any
know-
other way is stupid.
Yeah,
So I don't know how you can do it.
it's tough because you might have an element that gets cropped off that's important to the overall composition. Like this foot needs to be able to rest within this picture. You need to be able to see it. If you cut that off, like, man, it just kind of like destroys everything. So
Oh, we'll have it overlap the cover, the logo. Wait a minute.
they won't do
Foot?
it. Like, oh
Yeah,
no,
right.
it's like you can't overlap Superman by like, the 5% or something like that. Who
Is that
knows?
right? Is that
I don't know. I'm like,
Remember when
hey,
they threw the Marvel way out the window? That's what they should do.
they might get there because DC is kind of the new Marvel now.
But but it's those when those companies started, there was a much more of a what would I call it? A routine of they had it all ironed out. They knew there was a business and there was a format and there was
Right.
and over the years it's morphed and I'm surprised they still hold on to some of that stuff. I mean, it's just weird. I don't work in that world, so it's
Yeah, because
strange
I
to me.
can communicate things. It's all on what they want to do, but I try to understand, like, my job is like, look, I understand, like, if they have an agenda for what they want, they're like, hey, we want this type of cover and this, and we're like, okay, well, let me see what I can do with that. Because sometimes understanding the design space with the tools that you have, that's why I always say, like, you gotta make lemonade, because, like, sometimes they're just gonna give you something, and like, hey, look, here's your design space is this big. Here's the logo. This is how things are gonna rest, and this is really what we wanted. And like, when you're thumbnail, like, okay, these are the ideas I have, and let's execute and see which one is the best one. And sometimes they'll throw their idea in there, and it's like, okay, well, that's what you want. Then,
I find that is the hardest part of doing a cover is taking, like, because you always ask for the template first, right?
Yeah.
So how much space is the logo, and what other cover matter is on there, okay? But inevitably, you end up drawing a composition that is fairly square because you have to leave that first third for the logo. And square compositions almost always suck.
it's true. It kind of puts the FU in fun.
Yeah, because
right?
It's like you're having to pan and
balanced.
scan crop a widescreen image.
It's a perfectly balanced thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. I would
tough.
much rather, like, can you put the logo in the center?
I would love to be able to put the logo on the side,
Yeah,
or have it
exactly,
breaking
exactly.
or doing this. Because like, dude, they're looking
Yeah,
at
and then not only that, but the UPC box. Like, I'm often thinking, like, I do variants a lot because in fact they give you a lot of freedom. So I'm sitting there like, one day I'm gonna do a variant where like the UPC box is across someone's face.
Yeah,
And I
you should
would
have the
love
freedom to be able to do that.
Yeah,
when you
but
feel it's appropriate.
yeah, and I do. And like they give me the chance to redesign stuff. But when I get like something else where they go, no, we have to have the Rebirth logo and then the book logo, and I'm like, okay, my mind is immediately saying, I have to cut out the first third there because there's nothing. Like, I'd have to juggle.
You gotta see my originals. There's like this negative space.
Yeah, so I'm always thinking, like, how could I have a building falling? Okay, that's just blacked out in the top third or something, and someone's at the bottom. And those are the kind of composition, like, problem solving that I end up coming up with, because it's a square.
I love looking at Bill Stout's old stuff, his old originals, because
What's that?
Have you ever tried drawing upside down? And
Yes.
you're stuck like that?
Yeah.
Is the outcome very different?
Whenever I draw a figure falling, I draw
So you
that
can be
figure
really
upside
ripped
down.
up.
I don't
Yeah,
flip
me
the paper
too.
around.
Yeah.
On the complete opposite end of the freedom, to do whatever you want. Of course, there are restrictions all over the place. Have you ever found that there have been restrictions that have been put on you, whether time, whether design choices that they're like this and this and this have to be in there,
Yes.
that have ended up massively benefiting what you do unexpectedly?
No.
Ever. Ever.
No.
Or just in general, have you found restrictions, like being boxed into any restrictions, giving you an idea, giving you a thought, giving you a tactic that you use that you didn't expect going in?
Yeah, because limitations create problem solving. Like, it engenders problem solving. Right.
Is there a particular one of your covers that like comes to mind
No.
that you enjoy? It's always like drawing blood.
One time, I for something completely I won't name, I was told I would have complete freedom on this thing, and then they at the last minute they put a gigantic logo and
can you redo this?
and then another logo on top of that logo, and it was in a font that was like 80s action movie, and I was like,
You just totally
dude,
destroyed
yeah,
everything.
all I could do is 80s action movie. I can't play against this at any time.
You
like,
can't because it doesn't fit there.
yeah, it won't work. So I was like, well, now I have to come up with 80s action movie type of images, and that was none of my designs initially were this. I got the template late, and I was like, this will never work.
I said, can't you just have the letter change some of the 80s type font to something a little more modern?
Yeah, and it was like burnished metal type of thing, and I was just like,
to badge the time.
there's nothing I can do.
I think it's just kind of like making lemonade with whatever you got, and those are the always challenges. But for me, I'm always of the philosophy of like, if you hire, guys who do covers for you, and these guys are the equivalent of a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, then you let those cars do what they're designed to do. Go fast and do some cool shit.
Yeah, let them race, don't make them do a big commercial.
So,
Good at that.
and just let that car be that car, and you're gonna get something way awesome that you've never even experienced before. And but sometimes it's not that like that, and sometimes it's kind of like, well, you know, you have this pretty girl, and these guys that you know who give you work want to date your girl, so they like, take her on a date. By the time you get her back, you're like, you want to have nothing to do with her, and sometimes that happens, and you just have to deal with it. So.
One time,
It's
though,
tough.
complete opposite to that. One time I was because I paint book covers, and book covers for years, like I got used to, okay, look, whatever design I send in, you're gonna put the Oprah's book cover club sticker on this. Marketing is gonna redraw, ask you to take out all the back cover stuff if it's a jacket, and they're gonna want the big blurb, and there's gonna be some other matter. I accept that, you know. So I'm good. I'm malleable. I'm willing to be
You
flexible.
keeping that in mind though with the
Yeah,
design.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And then one day I got a call from Penguin Books, and they said, we'd like you to design the book jacket for our 25th edition of this, the anniversary edition of this book. And I said, okay, what do you need in this? Like, no, you can design it. I was like, what do you mean? They're like, you don't have any marketing? Marketing is going to say something. And they're like, no. And I was like, well, what do you need on this cover? And they said, we need the author's name, we need the title of the book, we need the Penguin logo, and we need the UPC box on the back. And the rest is up to you. So immediately I said, so can I put French flaps on this? And they said, yeah, if you want. Can I emboss the cover? Yeah, if you
That
want.
never happens.
And I said, can I put gold leaf on it? And they said, and they were like, well, yeah, if you want it. And that froze me, because I had never had that kind of freedom.
Chrome coat?
Dude,
Right?
that's
And
great, man.
so
yeah.
for like 2 weeks,
I mean, I could just bathe it in
I
didn't
olive
even know
oil.
what to
I
do with
couldn't draw anything because I was thinking of trying to please and imagine someone who could be pleased by anything, and it freaked me out, right? And then finally I just said,
Yeah,
what am I, like I basically had to slap myself.
Psych yourself
Please
out.
yourself. Yeah, and I was like, you know what, I'm
Yeah.
going to do the cover that I want in the ideal world.
That's what I do on every one now.
Well,
That's
but
fun.
they don't come,
Yeah,
they don't
but I
come
mean,
back with like, well, we'd like to put this, we have to put this matter on here.
Right. I'll make digital patches if I have to.
Oh, yeah.
If I have a good concept, like, and I don't want to like screw it up by their notes, I just do what I do and then I fix it in post. It's basically the
I
way I do it.
hate doing patches. That is just like, I hate it.
But it's only a patch for them. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, in your mind,
It's
you're
like,
like,
that's
you know
your
what,
patch.
this is the real cover,
This
and
is-
that's just whatever.
Exactly.
But it's. I think it's hard for me because it's just like, when you're designing and you're concepting and you're putting these things together.
Yeah, it's perfect, and then
Yeah, it is perfect, but you always want to ask the right questions. Like, hey, what do you guys have in mind? What are your expectations for this cover? You want to ask questions because you might deliver on something that you love, but then they're just like, well, this is not what we wanted, you know. we
and you
want
wasted
it.
your time.
Like, so, and you don't want to waste your time, because time is money in this business, especially like if you're backlogged on covers or doing stuff. Like, look, the worst thing in the world is having to go back and do something or patch it. You don't want to do that. You always want to ask the right questions, like, hey, look, okay, you want kids on the cover? Okay, like, what kind of kids do you want? Is there any ethnicity of the kids you like to see? All these things, you want to ask these questions on the front end, or like, hey, you want Superman doing? Well, Superman do anything? Well, yeah, can I have him hoisting a helicopter over his head, or hoisting a boulder, saving a little kitten? Can I get him rescuing a cat out of a tree? What do you guys want? Like, because if you have something in mind, try to get those questions out in beforehand. That way, those things can be discussed, and then when they come back, there's okay, Superman, no saving cat. We want Superman actually doing something super cool, not super lame. So you're like, okay, so yeah, your question.
Are you guys ever, are you guys like ever privy to like the narrative of the story you take for inspiration?
Sometimes not.
I'll give you a good example of this. Like when I first took on Hellblazer, my editor was Axel. I hadn't worked with him before, actually I'd worked with him on a couple small things, but the art direction on that was the writer to the editor, and then the editor filtering all that, and then giving me the concept, and then I would do what he wanted me to do. I would do a couple sketches and then Warren Ellis left the book, and the next guy came on was Brian Azzarello, and I knew Brian pretty well, and he lived up, pretty fairly close to me, so he was always late, never had a script done on time. So I would just call him when we'd skull, and I'd say, if it was a character that we hadn't seen before, I'd say, if you were making a movie, who would you cast in that part? And then, that's how I would get my cue. And so that was incredible freedom.
Great
And then-
questions, yeah.
And
Yeah.
then he left the book, and then Mike Carey came on. Now, completely different. I mean, every one of these guys, completely different way to do stuff. Now, Mike always has his scripts in on time. And this is my favorite way to work. Working with Brian that way is great. It's better when you know the person. But working the way I did with Mike Carey is fantastic because what you get is a script. You read the script, you pull out of that the visual images that strike you, and then that's your cover. And that's to me what
I like
perfect
that
freedom
better.
is.
I like that
when you
better.
can read the story, or you can take all that in and you can put it in, and then it comes out through your filter. That's what ideally what you want.
Right. But sometimes you don't have a script because the script isn't written at that time.
Yep.
Or you have to do like.
And you got to
4
get
in a row.
broad strokes.
Or they're like way behind and they have a general idea, like,
Yeah.
let's do this.
And sometimes, yeah, sometimes it's like, dude, you know what we don't know? Just do a killer, just do one that'll sell on.
Cool post.
Yeah, yeah,
Cool
post.
exactly. But even that, you know, it's like people started to come down like for a while on the single image cover guy with the gun thing. Of course, I'm like Join the Punisher, so that's almost like the art direction for every cover.
Just get Punisher again.
But I remember doing a panel at the show, and this guy that was mediating the panel was actually like he was like not a fan of those kind of covers. So he singled me out. He pulled me right out, and he was like Tim, for example. He does these ones with. And I was like, whoa. First of all, you're way.
Tim, by the way, here's how you.
Exactly.
You're like this, Tim.
His claim to fame was that he once art directed Frank Frazetta at Bantam for a week. Anyway,
Yeah, great.
Really? Just anybody really art directed that guy?
Wait a minute,
Right?
are you kidding me? That guy?
well, so what I said was, well, first of all, you're completely missing the entire point. If you're looking at it as just a guy with a gun on a cover, and that's nothing special because I took a shortcut, then you're missing the entire point.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when I draw just a guy on the cover with a gun in a pose or doing whatever, the story is in his face. The story is in that moment. And it's partly your responsibility as someone who is looking at that. And that's what I always think makes things better for the onlooker is when they can put themselves in that position, or they can do some of the math themselves. It's why I use a lot of heavy shadow, dramatic lighting, because wherever it's black, you're doing the math. So if you get this part right, then you're leaving the rest up for someone else to put together. And that thought process of involving you in it, even if it's there's not like instructions for that. It's just the way it is. We absorb this stuff. Ideally.
My favorite covers were actually when I do less.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of things like, especially with all the title headers and everything that they slap on stuff now.
It's the white background covers, man.
Those are fun
I love
too, and our heavy use of blacks, a lot of negative space, because then you're creating framing elements for people looking at that book. Because the things that I always try to keep in mind too is when I do a layout, I'll do a quick color swatch on it sometimes, and I'll take it into Photoshop and just shrink it down to where it's like a 1 by 1 inch square.
Can I still read it?
Can I still read it? And will those colors work, or can I shift the colors? Because Chiarello is really big about like, hey, look. These colors do not have to be these colors because people know it, but you can shift it if you want. You can do things. You can have fun with it, dude.
That's what I love about thumbnails.
There's
Yeah.
not just one.
I don't have to step back 20 feet
Yeah.
because it's a thumbnail.
Yeah, you want to understand like, okay, where is that book going to sit on the shelves? What are the books that are next to you? So if I'm with Superman, I'm going to be next to Spider-Man. I'm going to be next to this. So I'm going to be next to an Alex Ross cover and probably like a Spawn cover or something like that. I was like, okay, or another Superman book. Okay, cool. So what are they doing? And look at what they're doing and try to do something that's opposite. So, because the worst thing you want to do is have a book that comes out and it's like, oh, well, they're kind of doing a similar cover, or they did that similar cover this way or that. And, so, I mean, it's always a challenge because like some of the covers, like Superman stuff I did, Jorge Jimenez did some of the covers, and I wanted to keep the same flavor of it. So I kind of did some like Jimenez type things, and then.
Were you just trying to bridge to
Trying
where you
to,
came
but
in,
like
trying to
he does Draper really good and stuff like that. So I tried doing the same thing, and he thought I was copying him, and I was just like, oh, dude, no. It's like, no.
I'm trying to tribute you, man.
No, it's not tributing, but it's more of like, just like.
Well, as an editor, I don't like to see like jarring changes, like unless there's a reason for it.
Yeah, so-
when you're coming off another arc or another artist, then
Yeah, you wanna
having that
transition.
bridge, yeah, exactly, the transition.
It's
If
like-
you can't understand that, then you're an editor. You need to find a different
If
job.
you're not doing that, why are we numbering comics in the 900s?
we've stopped doing that. We're now numbering them all at number one again.
Again? But I thought we
Marvel's legacy thing, yeah.
Yeah, that was my joke. Is this week everything's a number one issue.
Yeah.
Next week, new number one issue. 2 number ones in the same year. What a great idea! I've got one last one for you
I
guys.
hate
If you've got
that.
questions of these wonderful gentlemen, they'll be at their tables all weekend. You should spend a whole bunch of money on them and everything. But do you have any colleagues in particular that you would brag on as doing particularly great work that you consistently admire, that just blows you out of the water, or even just one particular instance of something that one of your colleagues did that made you go, that is how you do a comics cover? Something that really...
Mignola does it to me all the time.
Oh, God.
Mike does it to me all the
Break
time.
his hands, he's so good. I think these guys are great. Like,
What is it that you like about it? What is it that gives
Mike
you
has
that
the
feeling?
classic, almost kind of Rosetta A-frame style with the most far away different style than Frank you'll ever find. And it's like having, let's say, for example, Bruce Timm doing an issue of The Punisher. It's like it's cast against type almost, right?
Yeah.
I think his use of blacks too. But you guys do that really well too. Like frame and composition.
His compositions is what I think are the strength of his.
You guys excellent. Like how do you guys frame things and use of black and balancing and things like that. Like for me, my stuff's a little more open, so I try to rely heavily more on color. Try to move things around, but I'm trying to learn, like, hey, more black is your friend, because it makes your life easier. You draw less, it's so much easier, it's so much nicer. So, trying to look at that, because you're, there's no set way of doing things, and it's always good to be inspired, and you should always be looking at people who are doing things, and it's like, hey, is there something I could take away that I can incorporate in my work to, like, maybe make this a little better, design-wise or composition-wise, use of lighting and things like that.
Especially people completely opposite. from
Oh
me.
yeah. It's just like.
I like Mike Del Mundo. Does some
Oh
stuff.
dude, yeah.
I always say dude, you're like my favorite, because there's like 2 avenues to approaching an illustration. There's a narrative way and there's a conceptual way, right? So narrative is you're telling a story through the cover, and then the other one is like a metaphor. Right, the conceptual is like a metaphor. Like, for example, you can draw Batman fighting a guy with multiple knives, right? And he's throwing knives at Batman. Or you could draw Batman running along a knife's edge, And one is conceptual and the other one's narrative, right? Mike does both exceptionally well. And when he does the conceptual stuff, it tells the story in that metaphor perfectly. Like he did a bunch of Star Wars covers that were just knockouts. One was in particular was a close up of Darth Vader's face, and in the grill was little baby Anakin Skywalker. And the grill is like
Smashed right into it. It was gross.
But the prison bars, right? So there's a complete narrative there. There's a little boy trapped inside this mask, right? Another one was just a giant montage cover of all the Star Wars parts, like Han Solo, Death Star, and all that. But as you go slowly from the top to the bottom, it's a hologram image being projected by R2-D2 at the bottom. And so it's R2-D2 telling the narrative of the entire history of Star Wars. Those types of covers, when I see them, it's like that's.
Because they're called the "You're My Only Hope" covers, right?
But that's a man. That's a person who, as good as his technique is, his brain is also, is working as much as And the thing that I always, admire is when, when artists like the thought process is what does it for me, for the artist. Because to me, as an illustrator, when I was starting out, I was reliant on technique, and it only in my 30s that I realized that concept trumps technique any day of the week. A really great idea can be expressed in a multitude of different styles, right? But that really great idea, lasts beyond the hotness of the style. And Mike's great at that. Dave Johnson's excellent.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Dave's universal.
Dave's
That's been Dave's strength from the beginning.
Yeah. So there's
a whole other beast. Yeah.
But Mike's the new one that I was like, man, when I saw his cover, I was like, gee, you're such a good thinker. That's such smart thinking.
Almost my favorite artist is even in the comics industry right now. I love this guy who does these they're almost like engravings, but he must do them digitally somehow. And he does covers for Barnes & Noble. So if you look and you go to Barnes & Noble and you find these special editions of Around the World in 80 Days.
Oh, I've seen those. Yeah, those are awesome.
It's amazing, and it's this, it's Phineas Fogg running around the, like a globe that's set in a like a wooden kind of frame, and he's running around the frame as the world spins the opposite direction, and it's the the thinking behind it is just inspiring. That's what I love, is like seeing someone take a very common thought and just present it in a way you've never would have come up with. It blows me away. But he does. I mean, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yeah.
All of his engravings or whatever the hell they are.
Do they look like etchings?
Yeah, they're like the old like.
Yeah.
They're hardcover too.
Yeah.
They're like $8 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, these are the ones I'm talking about. Are these trade editions? They're trade editions, and God, I wish we knew we had a screen.
Somebody Google it quick.
Yeah, like, are you going to use visual stuff? And I'm like, I didn't know that we could.
Yeah.
We would have prepped.
I didn't even know we were doing this.
And that, to me, it inspired me because I'd never looked at things in that kind of that editorial kind of way before. I don't approach things like that. So
well, you have a different approach to something like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea versus Superman number 9.
Right. I mean, I'd be drawing Ned wrestling with a squid or something like that. You know, I wouldn't think of doing what that guy did for it, and what he did is just it's amazing.
That's always good though. It's like looking at other artists and seeing what the takeaway was, and even if you get like people think you're swiping or whatever, I think we always stand on the shoulders of others, you know what I mean? And I think it's just to be inspired and to see good design and good composition transcends any media. And if there's something that you feel like, wow, you know what, like what Drew does with this or what this guy does with his etchings, is like, is there some takeaway here that I can incorporate in my own work to make this cover like really something different and things like that? And that's the thing that you always want to do, because it's kind of like taking what someone else has done and then taking it even further, adding your own twist to it, or doing things. That's
or
what
bringing in something from another field.
Oh yeah, dude!
Like that's really what I
Cross-genre.
Graphic design covers for comics was unheard of until the last 10 years. I think, to be quite honest.
But you see, like a history of that, like artists taking, like I don't know, in the '70s, like people to bring pre-Raphaelite art into comics. So who would have thought of that? You know?
You've got stuff that looks like it's John Everett Malay's cousin.
Yeah.
So I like the opening up as comics history unfolds, of bringing other genres of art, other influences, and enriching this.
Just quickly,
go ahead.
Your favorite cover that you guys have done. Your one favorite cover that if you died tomorrow, what you hope don't happen, that you can go.
Is there one that you can look at and not still go, I still wish I'd kind of done this, or I wish I'd given me another 2 days or something?
My favorite cover is the one I haven't done yet. Sorry.
The Philosopher King.
Sorry, man.
Michael.
No, it's. I always want to feel like the next one in my head is going to work out perfectly, because all the old ones, all I see are flaws.
Oh, dude.
Anything older than 6 months, it's slowing down. It's like a year now, which tells me that I must be like getting like complacent or something.
If I had that one new set of friends.
Yeah, but when I look at something I did, I go like, all I see is that one mistake.
I just want to
figures.
redraw it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and people can point out, oh no, I love that. It's like, when I see that, my eye immediately goes to this mistake, or I could have done this and I didn't because I cheaped out at the last minute and doubted myself.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I don't think there's any one. I don't think so, because
It changes all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, you evolve as an artist, like you were just saying. You look back at the stuff you did, and this is what I tell young guys. I said, look back at the stuff you did 6 months ago, and if you're kicking its ass right now, then you know you're getting better.
Yeah.
You
If
just
you
keep
don't
doing it.
hate the stuff you did 2 years ago, you're complacent. Now you're stagnant.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Like you should be looking like when I
There are exceptions to that.
there are young artists I run into.
there might be one or two.
There are pieces that hold
yeah,
their
yeah,
strength.
that's still
But then, like,
But those-
overall,
that was a marker of a certain like leveling up.
Right.
Basically, I have a group of what I call like steps in my career where I had to raise my bar, and I had to like kick this thing's ass, and I hit a point on it where I went, oh shit, that's better than anything I've ever done. Well, then that becomes the bar, and everything else you do, you try to equal that. And then when you get to the point where everything you're doing is as good as that, you take the next step,
you have to.
and you keep taking those steps. And so my answer to that question is it changes all the time. Sometimes, I hate it because maybe one thing went wrong. But there are a lot of times that something will turn out better than I ever hoped. And
the happy
and that's great.
So a slight variation on that. Is there one that you can think of that stayed the one that you were the proudest of for the longest? That you were
I'll always like that. There's a Punisher cover of, I think it's Punisher Max 48. And it's just pretty much a black and white cover, and he's standing in a tree line. And he's almost lost in the tree line, but the skull pops out of it. And there's like fog on the back of the tree line, and it's all just very stark. And that one is just, it's like one of those, it's for me, it's like I realized about 6 months after I'd done it that it transcended a lot of the other pieces, and it'll stay. because I'm stepping back. I'm not looking at it as something I did. I'm just looking at it as a piece of art in the canon of Punisher. And to me, it was like that's the one that stands out.
And that's usually
for
the
me.
piece that they use all the time. Like, this is the marquee.
They
Punisher.
never use it, which is great.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they never use
Oh, man, you should tell me what's wrong with you.
Black and white, are you kidding? It's gotta have color.
Yeah, the most popular stuff, the stuff I like the most is stuff nobody likes. I always find that the
I
most
always-
popular ones that it's like, really?
I take the boring
Yeah.
pages because they have the best art on them, and then
Yeah,
the penciler's like, oh, thanks, man, I got a bunch of cherry pages
Yeah,
here.
exactly. Like
That's what I'm keeping mine.
they buy the Batman shot that has Batman coming through the window, but it's like badly drawn. And then there's another page, like it's like, let's say it's Garcia Lopez or something, and he's drawn like a marketplace,
guy's
and he's drawn an
amazing.
airport, and it's in full lighting, and then it's at midnight, and it's like there's some amazing
And he drew it yesterday.
stuff. Yeah, and then but the Batman page is like 10,000, and the airport page is like $100.
I'll take that airport page.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
like,
So
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I have a pile of artwork from people that like that, just like that.
You know what? I had a bunch of stuff and I even sold it because I needed money back in the day. And now I'm like thinking to myself, because I had a lot of cool Arthur Adams stuff. No covers, but mostly interiors, a lot of Jason Piercy stuff. And Jason is a real master at like spotting blacks and compositions.
I wish
In my
Jason
opinion.
hadn't lost his mind because he is he back?
I don't think he's back. Like he's still doing his own stuff. I think
Finger not on
it's
pulse.
it's a different conversation, but I think the industry.
It really chews people
It
up.
does chew people up and spit you out, and it's very like I think as
Everyone goes through a hard time.
I think so. I think, but you really have to have a kind of like even like whatever. Let's maybe a little take away off the subject, but like when you're working in this industry, you really gotta have a good game plan for yourself. Is where you want to go and where you want to take your work, and where do you want to end up? Like, do you want to be looked at as someone who just produces art and you look at you as an art monkey, or do you want to be looked at as a creator? And a creator is someone who also writes and draws. So and,
Just a craftsman.
And yeah, so and sometimes there's if something like cautionary here is if someone like Drew Struzan could get dumped on, quote unquote, for bad Photoshop stuff, then you need to understand it's like, okay, you know what, like I need to make some moves here that are going to put me in a better position for the long run, and that's different for everybody.
But that's the arc of every career.
Never worry about it. You know,
Can
it's
be.
like
No, like Struzan gets dumped on, and then in 15 years they rediscover him, and then
Oh,
that's
yes.
when he gets
Of
all
course.
the accolades.
Of
And
course.
then they start
There's a low period,
putting
and
his stuff
then
on Hot Topic shirts.
no. What happens is like, oh,
Yeah.
you're a hot artist, and then you're not the hot artist, and then you're that guy at the con that nobody goes to see. I saw this with other artists. Where I was like,
No,
and then what
I
happens?
started-
And
yeah.
then what happens is a new hot artist comes by who has that guy as his reference. And when they
That's-
talk to that newer hot artist, it's like, you know what, my favorite artist was
That's
this
true.
guy. And then people rediscover that guy.
nice thing about Drew too is that, that aside from his early days in advertising and stuff like that, his career was a slow burn, just a nice slow burn. I mean, artists I've known Stel Freeze used to like talk about, oh, you get this like back in the day when you didn't have the internet, you know, you'd be like, oh, in the back of this magazine that they're offering this new Bob Peak book and there's a Struzan book and blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh man, we should get that, you know. And but it's true. It doesn't matter who it is. It really doesn't. And I finally found I discovered this through. He's not an artist, but he's a creator. Frank Darabont was trying to get do a remake of Fahrenheit 451. He had Tom Hanks.
Oh yeah, is that still happening?
He had everything set up. They just didn't think it'd make money, so they said no. I'm
What?
like, man, if Frank Darabont can't get that movie off the ground,
Yeah, he's the one who got that on the
with
TV.
Tom Hanks headline.
then and this is 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, he was even more popular
I
back then.
actually heard like there's a remake that's happening. I read it somewhere.
Yeah, everybody's constantly developing.
It's been floating around for a while.
They're gonna kick us all the way out of this. I wish there
Oh,
were more
sorry.
questions or anything, but I mean, what we got was this like Dick Cavett show style, just talking. Everybody in this room's too young for that, I think. But
me.
I mean,
the one, there were just a little plug that I was going to throw in here. We talked about Frank Frazetta a few times. If you go on Kickstarter, there's a Kickstarter going for about another week called Frazetta Worlds. It's the first time that Frank Frazetta paintings are being screen printed.
Oh, wow.
Screen prints of Death Dealer, Barbarian, because
Not
of the-
really.
On what kind of merchandise?
Just
prints?
so prints of those two, of Silver Warrior and the Huns.
Wow.
The Huns is the bonus print if you get the whole set.
Sweet, I'm gonna have to look into that.
And enamel pins, and there's like an ultra deluxe set that has Death Dealer, I think monochromatic, and there's an ugly Christmas sweater.
If you're a fan of Frazetta, I got a real beautiful opportunity a couple years ago at Comic-Con. Robert Rodriguez had made
I remember that. Yeah,
made a deal with the Frazettas, and he was touring. I think it was 15 paintings around the country.
Yeah.
And this was part of a deal he'd made with the Frazettas. He's got the rights to Fire and Ice and things like that. So you might see a live action Fire and Ice coming up from Robert Rodriguez. But anyway, the amazing thing about this is I'm walking around this room where he's got these Frazetta paintings in the flesh. And I'm looking at these paintings, and I'm just standing in front of them, just lost. In a painting I've seen 1,000 times, but seeing colors I've never seen
the
before.
originals are always better
Yeah.
than the.
And it's uncanny. I mean, especially with Frazetta, to see what that real art looks like. It'll blow your mind.
And for
If
those
you know
unfamiliar
what you're
with the printing
looking at.
techniques, I mean, there have been sheet glaze of these things for days and days and days, but the
No,
silk screening process,
they don't come close,
they're
yeah.
layer and layer and layer. As
How
close,
many layers?
How
How many screens are on this thing? Like 20?
75, it's like a Japanese
over
sword.
20. Over 20.
Fuck
Like,
you, man.
no, honestly, it's over 20 layers on all 4 of them, easy, if not more. Like, I think they're just going to do the test prints now.
There's something going around on Twitter right now. I don't know if you've seen it, where these guys are using this resin or some sort of thinner to take 20 years worth
Oh, I saw
of
that. Yeah.
grime off these paintings, and these paintings are like completely.
That's the
like-
varnish stuff.
Yeah, is it a varnish?
Varnish? No, the varnish is being pulled
Oh,
off.
okay.
The varnish collects dust, it collects all
It's so
kinds of...
amazing, like,
Yeah.
dude, like, holy. But I'm always worried, like, does that hurt the value of that painting?
Yeah, you know what I don't like is that they're actually filming that, because it's like, dude, just take the care and do the thing.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
pro and
Don't
con
hold
to
the
that,
camera
isn't
low.
there?
Yeah.
There's a pro and con to that, because if we only know the painting is this, to change the painting back, you would think some people might have an issue with that.
Nah, go with the artist's intent.
I think you
Yeah.
have to go back, and if you
Yeah.
have an opportunity to make that thing look like the original,
Yeah.
do it. Although, how would you know?
Yeah, but it's kind of like Roman sculptures. Would you like to see color restored on marble sculptures? And those are the things that look hideous. So
Was it colored?
They were colored
for
like
an hour and a
yellows
half if I
and
talked
reds.
about digital recoloring and retouching.
Thank you, guys.